She couldn't see his face, yet she described his death in detail, and the Alpha King knew she wasn't guessing. Blood poured from her eyes as she spoke the future out loud. So why did he still refuse to listen? Welcome to Paranormal Mate Tales. If you think you understand fate, tonight's story will prove you wrong. To those returning, welcome back. To the brave souls listening for the first time, know this. Once this tale begins, there's no turning back. I'm Debbie Peters, and what you're about to hear will shatter the rules of mates, power, and forbidden bonds forever. Before we begin, take just 1 second and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing these stories get around. And when the story is done, please subscribe because this channel survives on subscriptions. And without them, it dies. So subscribe. Keep it alive. Now the tales begin. The Omega Quarter stank of wet stone and desperation. Zenara Velis moved through the darkness with practiced grace, her bare feet whispering against cold flagstone as she carried a bundle of soiled linens toward the washing chambers. She needed no eyes to navigate these corridors. 7 years of blindness had taught her that sight was merely one way to know the world. The echo of her footsteps told her when walls narrowed. The shift in air temperature revealed when she approached the ventilation shafts. The scent of lye soap and mildew guided her to her destination. Above her, in the sunlit halls of Vorth Keep, alphas walked in armor that sang with each step. Betas conducted the kingdom's business in chambers warmed by roaring fires. But here, in the labyrinth beneath the castle, Omegas existed in perpetual twilight, forgotten, underestimated, invisible. Zenara preferred it that way. Invisibility was survival. She had just set down her burden when the vision seized her. It always began the same way, a pressure building behind her useless eyes, then a violent wrench as reality tore open. This time, the images came with devastating clarity. The throne room of Vorth Keep materialized before her, more vivid than any memory of the sighted world she'd lost as a child. Blood. Everywhere blood, pooling across marble floors, streaming down the sides of the ancient stone throne. King Silrith Nalindar lay broken beside his shattered crown, a silver dagger protruding from between his ribs. His eyes, those fierce amber eyes that had conquered 7 rival packs, stared sightlessly at the vaulted ceiling. The vision shifted. Mornvale burned. Flames devoured the outer districts, while screams echoed through streets that had known peace for 20 years. A red sky pulsed overhead like a wound. And standing in the throne room, holding the bloodied dagger, was a figure whose face remained frustratingly obscured in shadow. "No!" Zenara gasped, but the vision wouldn't release her. She saw herself there too, reaching out toward the king, her mouth open in a scream of warning. Too late. Always too late. The vision released her with the force of a physical blow. Zenara's knees struck stone. Her hands clawed at the wall, nails splitting against rough granite until her fingers came away wet and warm. The metallic scent of her own blood filled her nostrils. "Zenara!" Footsteps rushed toward her. Myrithra Kelvas, her adoptive sister, wrapped strong arms around her trembling shoulders. "Another one?" Zenara nodded, unable to speak past the terror lodged in her throat. "You're bleeding again." Myrithra's voice carried the weariness of someone who had cleaned too many such wounds. "What did you see this time?" "The king." Zenara's voice emerged as a broken whisper. "Dead. The kingdom burning. Myrithra, it was so clear. More real than anything I've seen before." Her sister's grip tightened. "You cannot speak of this. Prophets are punished, not praised. They'll call you mad. Or worse, they'll call you a traitor spreading panic." "But if I say nothing, if you say nothing, you live. Zenara, please. You're an Omega, a blind Omega. They'll never believe you." Silence stretched between them, and broken only by the distant sound of water dripping and the muffled voices of other Omegas beginning their morning labors. Marithra was right. In the rigid hierarchy of werewolf society, Zinara ranked barely above livestock. King Silrith Nalindar, who had carved his throne from the bones of his enemies, would never grant audience to someone like her. But in her vision, she had seen the exact pattern of bloodstains on the throne room floor. She had counted the petals falling from the winter roses in the eastern alcove. She had felt the weight of the king's final breath. Zinara pulled away from her sister's embrace and straightened her spine. Her sightless eyes, clouded and white, stared into the darkness that was her only world. "If I remain silent," she whispered, "the kingdom dies." In the distant upper halls, a bell tolled, marking the changing of the guard. Zinara turned her face toward the sound, toward the world of light and power that had always been forbidden to her kind. Tomorrow, she would find a way to reach the king, even if it cost her everything. King Silrith Nalindar sat upon the throne of 7 packs like a storm-given form. His armor was black steel chased with silver, his fur mantle the pelts of rivals who had challenged his crown. Scars mapped his exposed forearms, a ledger of battles won through violence and will. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Denied," he said, not bothering to look at the supplicant before him. "Next petition." The great hall of Vorath Keep stretched vast and cold around him. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating the faces of his court. To his right stood Lord Arendor Vashal, his most trusted advisor, calm and watchful as always. To his left, Lady Kalithra Nalis reviewed documents with the precise attention that had made her the kingdom's most brilliant strategic mind. Behind the throne, Commander Solverin Zarathil maintained his silent vigil, hand resting on his sword hilt. This was power. This was order. Then the Omega entered. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled nobles. Protocol dictated that Omegas never approach the throne without summons. Yet here one came, guided by a reluctant guard whose face betrayed his discomfort at allowing such a breach. Silrith's amber eyes narrowed. The woman was young, dressed in the rough homespun of the lower quarters. A strip of faded cloth covered her eyes. She moved with the hesitant steps of the blind, one hand extended as if feeling for obstacles only she could perceive. "Your Majesty," the guard began. She demanded, "Remove her," Silrith commanded. "Please." The Omega's voice cut through the hall, raw with desperation. "I must speak. You've seen nothing." Silrith leaned forward, contempt sharpening his words. "You're blind." "I see what others cannot." Zinara's hands trembled, but she straightened her spine. "I see your death, King Silrith. I see Mornvale burning." The court erupted in outraged muttering. Arendor stepped forward, his voice cold. "Treason. She speaks treason before the throne." "No." Zinara turned toward Silrith's voice with unnerving precision. "I speak truth. You have a scar on your left ribs, jagged as lightning. You earned it in the Battle of Thornmarch when you were still proving your worth." Silrith's hand moved unconsciously to his side. That scar was hidden beneath armor and cloth. He had told no one of its origin. "The moon tapestry in your private chambers," Zinara continued, her voice gaining strength. "It conceals a passage to the Eastern Tower. You use it when you need solitude." Kalithra's composed expression cracked slightly. Even she hadn't known about that passage. "And every night," Zinara whispered, "you remove your crown and set it on the window ledge. You stand there in darkness, looking at your kingdom, wondering if strength alone is enough to keep it safe." Silence crashed over the hall like a physical weight. Silrith rose from his throne, descending the dais steps with measured fury. He stopped before Zinara, towering over her slight frame. This close, he could see her clouded eyes, the dried blood beneath her fingernails, the way she held herself as if preparing for a blow. How? The word emerged as a growl. How does a blind Omega know what my own guard does not? I see the future, Your Majesty. And in every vision, you die 3 nights hence. During the Red Moon ceremony. I don't know who kills you, but I know the dagger they'll use. Silver. With a wolf's head pommel. Madness, Arendor declared. Or espionage. Imprisonment, Calithra suggested smoothly. She's clearly been fed information by someone seeking to destabilize the court. Silrith stared at the blind woman before him. Ancient stories spoke of seers who traded sight for prophecy, oracles dismissed by kings too proud to listen. Cassandra of Troy. Screaming warnings no one believed. But those were myths. This was reality. Yet she knew about the scar, the passage, his private rituals. Take her to the Eastern Tower, Silrith commanded. Not the dungeons. A proper chamber, under guard. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. If you're truly a prophet, prove it. If you're a spy, you'll beg for the mercy of a quick death. As guards escorted her away, Silrith returned to his throne, but he could not settle. His fingers drummed against the armrest. How does a blind Omega see what my enemies never have? The question would haunt him through the coming night. The Eastern Tower chamber was not a dungeon, but it was still a cage. Zenara sat on the stone bench, wrists bound in iron, listening to the wind howl beyond the narrow window. She had been there 3 hours when the door opened with deliberate force. King Silrith entered alone. No guards, Your Majesty? Zenara asked quietly. I don't need guards to deal with one blind Omega. He circled her like a predator assessing prey. Now, you will tell me who feeds you information. No one feeds me anything. I see the Battle of Thornmarch. His voice cut like a blade. Tell me how it ended. Zenara tilted her head, listening beyond his words to the tension in his breath. You killed Lord Ravek with his own sword after he broke the terms of single combat. 3 of his men tried to avenge him. You killed them too. The grass ran red for 3 days. Silrith's jaw tightened. Only 5 people had witnessed that battle's conclusion. 3 were dead. The betrayal at Coldmere Pass, he demanded. What happened? Your beta commander, Thasan, sold routes to the Northern Raiders. You discovered this when you found your mother's ring among their plunder. You executed him yourself. At dawn. You were 19 years old. The memory tasted like ash in Silrith's mouth. He had told no one about his mother's ring. Espionage, he growled, but the word lacked conviction. Someone has been gathering. Zenara's body went rigid. Her head snapped back, and when she opened her mouth, blood began streaming from beneath her blindfold. Thick, dark red tears that carved trails down her pale cheeks. Silrith moved instinctively forward, then stopped. The dagger, she gasped, her voice distant and hollow. Silver. Wolf's head pommel. Emeralds for eyes. It's in the palace. Hidden in a place of loyalty. Her breath came in ragged sobs. I see it. I see it covered in your blood. The vision released her as violently as it had seized her. She slumped forward, chains rattling. Blood dripped from her chin onto the stone floor. Silrith stood frozen, watching this blind woman bleed from eyes that couldn't see. His first instinct was to call for healers. His second was to walk away. He chose the latter, but found his feet wouldn't move. Enough, he said finally. These theatrics prove nothing. Zenara lifted her head. Even through the bloodied blindfold, her awareness of him was unnerving. You don't want to believe me because believing would mean your choices don't matter. That fate exists beyond your control. I built this throne through choice, through will. And you'll lose it the same way, through the choice to ignore truth because it frightens you. The words struck something deep in Silrith's chest. He noticed for the first time how calmly she bore her chains. No pleading, no cowering, just devastating certainty. And beneath his fury, he sensed something else, a loneliness that mirrored his own. This woman who saw everything yet was seen by no one. This king who commanded thousands yet trusted none. "You will remain here," Silrith declared, turning toward the door, "until I determine your purpose. My purpose is to save your life." Zanara's voice followed him, soft but absolute. "Your disbelief will kill you." The door slammed shut, but her words remained echoing in the hollow places of his heart. 2 days passed before Zanara was brought before the court again. This time, chains bound her wrists as guards positioned her at the base of the dais. The assembled nobles whispered and stared. The Mad Omega, the blind prophet, the king's curiosity. Silrith sat rigid upon his throne, amber eyes unreadable. "You will make a prediction," he commanded. "Something specific. Something we can verify immediately." Zanara turned her blindfolded face toward the gathered court. "Lord Theron Miraval," she said clearly. "Third son of House Miraval. He carries a sealed letter in his left boot. A letter promising the northern garrison routes to House Kardesh in exchange for gold and a seat on their council." The court erupted. Lord Theron, a lean man with a carefully groomed beard, laughed incredulously. "Absurd! Your Majesty, this is exactly the destabilizing nonsense I warned about. She seeks to turn us against each other." "Search him," Silrith ordered. "My king, Search him." Commander Solverin moved with practiced efficiency. Within moments, he produced a folded parchment from Lord Theron's boot. The wax seal bore House Kardesh's sigil. Solverin broke it open, his expression darkening as he read. "Garrison routes," he confirmed quietly. "Promise delivery before the Red Moon ceremony. Payment of 1,500 gold pieces." The color drained from Theron's face. "I can explain." "Take him," Silrith said, his voice cold as winter stone. As guards dragged the screaming noble away, the court fell into stunned silence. Lady Calithra maintained her composed mask, though her fingers tightened on her documents. Lord Arendor studied Zanara with new wariness. "Coincidence," muttered Baron Kelmar from the second row. "She guessed. Or she's part of the conspiracy herself." "Part of the conspiracy?" Silrith's voice carried lethal softness. "She exposed it." "She's an Omega," another noble whispered loudly enough to be heard. "They're clever deceivers. It's their only weapon." "She's mad," said a Beta woman, emboldened by the crowd. "My mother saw prophets like this in the outer villages. They speak in riddles and call it sight. One lucky guess doesn't—" "Silence." Silrith descended the dais, his presence commanding absolute obedience. He stopped before Zanara, close enough that she could likely sense his heat. "You were right." "I know. One correct prediction doesn't prove— This was the smallest death I saw." Zanara interrupted, her voice carrying throughout the hall. "A minor betrayal. A single traitor. In 3 nights you'll face something worse. Something that will drown this kingdom in blood." Silrith's jaw clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to reject this. He had built his reign on strength, on the belief that will could overcome any obstacle. To accept prophecy was to accept powerlessness, to admit that some forces existed beyond even a king's control. Yet she had known about Theron, about the letter, about everything. "You will remain under royal protection," Silrith announced, shocking the court once more. "Anyone who harms her answers to me personally." The whispers intensified. Royal protection for an Omega was unprecedented. Under werewolf law, such favor suggested— No, impossible. Alpha-Omega bonds were forbidden. considered corruption of bloodlines, a perversion of natural order. Alphas bred with alphas, or, occasionally, strong betas, never omegas. But as Silrith turned back to his throne, his eyes lingered on Zanara's bloodied hands, her defiant posture despite the chains. Something stirred in his chest. Not desire exactly. Something more dangerous. Recognition. That night, he visited her tower chamber under cover of darkness. No guards. No witnesses. "Why do you protect me now?" Zanara asked when she heard him enter. "You proved your gift is real. But you still don't believe the rest." Silrith was silent. She was right. He believed she had some ability, yes. Perhaps she read intentions through scent and sound in ways others couldn't. Perhaps she gathered information through methods he hadn't uncovered. But fate? Prophecy? Death written in the stars? "I believe in choice," he said finally. "Not destiny." Zanara smiled sadly, as if she'd heard this argument 1,000 times in 1,000 futures. Even choosing not to believe is a choice, and choices have consequences. Then I'll face those consequences on my terms. "This was the smallest death I saw," she whispered again, and the words sent ice through his veins. The third night, Silrith came to her chamber after moonrise, when even the guards had grown drowsy at their posts. He entered without announcement, and Zanara heard the deliberate heaviness of his steps, the sound of a man choosing to be heard. "You walk differently when you're alone," she observed. "You notice everything." It wasn't quite a question. "I have to. The world doesn't accommodate blindness. We must accommodate the world." Silrith moved to the window, his silhouette framed against the starlight. "Show me." "Show you what?" "How you see without eyes." Zanara tilted her head, surprised. "Why?" "Because I need to understand." His voice carried a rawness she hadn't heard before. "If I'm to trust your visions, I must understand how you perceive what others cannot." She stood slowly, approaching him with careful steps. "Then you must be willing to surrender your sight. Close your eyes, Your Majesty." "Silrith." The correction was quiet. "In this room, I'm just Silrith." "Close your eyes, Silrith." He obeyed. In darkness, she heard the whisper of leather and metal as he removed his sword belt, then the heavier sounds of his armor being set aside piece by piece. Finally, the faint scrape of his crown placed on the stone windowsill. "Now," Zanara said softly, "tell me what you hear." "Wind. Your breathing. My own heartbeat." "Listen deeper. The wind carries scents, pine from the eastern forests, smoke from the kitchen fires, lavender from the royal gardens. Your heartbeat tells me you're nervous. Your breathing is controlled, but your left foot shifts weight every few moments. You're uncomfortable being vulnerable." Silrith's eyes opened despite himself. She stood close now, close enough that he could see the dried blood still staining her blindfold from her last vision. "How did you know about my foot?" "The sound of leather on stone, the slight creak of your weight redistributing." "Everything speaks, Silrith. You've just forgotten how to listen." He studied her in the dim light. "Why can you do this? The visions? Why you?" "I don't know. The fever that took my sight. It opened something else." She hesitated. "But you understand better than most what it means to become something you weren't born to be." Silrith stiffened. "What do you mean?" "You carry yourself like a king, but underneath there's an echo of someone who had to prove they deserved to stand upright. You weren't born alpha, were you?" The silence stretched so long, Zanara thought he might leave. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "No. I was born beta. Weak. Unremarkable. The words tasted like poison. When I was 17, I traveled to the shrine of the first wolf, an ancient place where legends say the original werewolf was born. There's a ritual there. Forbidden, dangerous. It requires blood sacrifice and an offering of what you value most. What did you offer? My past. My name. Everything I was. His hand unconsciously moved to his chest. The ritual, changed me. Made me alpha through will alone. I proved that destiny is a lie. That we are what we choose to become. Understanding crashed over Zanara like a wave. That's why you hate my visions. I don't hate. You do. Because if fate exists, if the future is already written, then your entire life is a lie. Everything you sacrificed, everything you became, meaningless. Silrith's jaw clenched. Yes. Zanara reached out slowly, giving him time to pull away. When he didn't, her fingers found his face, tracing the scars along his jaw, the tension in his temple. Fate does not erase choice, Silrith. It reveals its cost. He caught her wrist, not roughly, but firmly. What does that mean? You chose to become Alpha. That choice led you here, to this throne, to this moment. My visions don't show what must be. They show what will be if nothing changes. Every choice matters. Every action ripples forward. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You chose to remake yourself. Now you must choose whether to save yourself. In the darkness of that tower room, King and Omega stood close enough to share breath, separated by everything society demanded, yet bound by something neither could name. I don't know how, Silrith admitted. Then let me help you see. The vision struck without warning. One moment, Zanara was standing with Silrith in the tower chamber. The next, she was 7 years old again. Small and trembling in a servant's quarters she barely remembered. The memory unfolded with the crystalline clarity of prophecy, but twisted backward into the past. She saw herself as a child, already experiencing flashes of sight, glimpses of servants breaking dishes before they fell, warnings of storms before clouds gathered. Her mother, a beta seamstress, had been afraid of what the gift might mean, what punishment it might bring. Then came the woman. Zanara couldn't see her face. It remained frustratingly obscured, as if the memory itself had been deliberately scarred. But she heard the voice, cultured and calm, offering her mother a purse of coins and a small vial. The child's gift is dangerous, the woman said. For everyone. This will quiet her. Her mother had wept as she poured the poison into Zanara's evening tea. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. But they'll kill you otherwise. This way you'll live. You'll live, even if you can't see. The fever came that night. 3 days of agony as the poison burned through her system, destroying her eyes from within but failing to destroy her completely. The prophetic gift hadn't died. It had merely changed, growing stronger in the darkness, feeding on the very blindness meant to silence it. Zanara returned to the present with a gasp, her hands clawing at her blindfold. What did you see? Silrith demanded, catching her before she fell. My blindness. The words came out broken. It wasn't natural. Someone poisoned me. Someone who knew what I would become. Who? I couldn't see her face, but I heard her voice. Refined, educated. Someone from court. Zanara's breath came in ragged gasps as understanding crystallized. Silrith, I was 7 years old. 7. And someone already feared me enough to try to destroy my gift. They failed. No. Zanara straightened, something fierce awakening in her chest. They made me stronger. The blindness forced my visions to sharpen. They tried to silence prophecy and instead created something they couldn't control. She wasn't broken. She had never been broken. She was dangerous, dangerous enough that someone had tried to eliminate her before she could speak. And suddenly, horribly, another truth emerged. The traitor, Zinara whispered, ice flooding her veins. Whoever is planning your death, they've always known who I was. In the silence that followed, they both understood. The prophecy and the plot were connected. They always had been. Silrith summoned his war council at dawn. Lord Arendor arrived first, his composed face revealing nothing. Commander Solvrin followed, hand never far from his blade. Lady Calithra entered last, documents clutched to her chest as always, her expression one of concerned devotion. "We have a traitor," Silrith announced without preamble. "Someone who has moved against this throne for years." Arendor's eyes narrowed. "Do we have proof?" "The Omega's visions are not evidence, Your Majesty." Calithra's voice carried gentle reproach. Lord Theron's betrayal was one thing, but to accuse a member of your inner council based on prophecy alone? "I found this in Arendor's study." Solvrin placed a leather-bound journal on the table. "Correspondence with House Kardesh. Plans for destabilizing the Northern Territories." Arendor's face went white. "That's not mine. I've never—" "Your seal. Your handwriting." Calithra examined the pages with clinical precision. "My lord, how could you?" Zinara stood silently in the corner, her blindfolded face turned toward the gathered council. Something felt wrong. The evidence was too convenient, too perfect, like a vision deliberately obscured. Then it came. Not a full vision, but a flash. A memory superimposed over present reality. She saw Calithra's hands, younger but unmistakable, placing coins in her mother's palm. The voice from her childhood matched perfectly. Cultured, calm, lethal. "It's not him," Zinara said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. "The journal is a forgery. Arendor isn't the traitor." She took a step forward, her voice gaining strength. "Lady Calithra, you were the woman who poisoned me. 20 years ago, you knew I would see your betrayal, so you tried to blind prophecy itself." Calithra's composed mask didn't crack. "Absurd. I was merely a girl then. You were 17, the daughter of the Alpha King Silrith killed in ritual combat. You've spent 2 decades earning his trust, giving him counsel designed to position the kingdom for collapse. Every suggestion, every strategy, all of it leading to this moment." Silrith stared at his oldest friend, the woman who had stood beside him through every battle. "Calithra?" For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Calithra smiled, a cold, beautiful expression that held no warmth. "Finally," she breathed. "Finally, someone sees." Commander Solvrin's hand moved to his sword, but Calithra raised a palm. "Peace, Commander. The Red Moon ceremony is tomorrow night, and let's see if the blind prophet can prevent what's already in motion." She turned to leave, her composure absolute. "You should have stayed silent, little Omega. Some truths are more dangerous than blindness." As the door closed behind her, Zinara whispered the words that haunted her darkest visions. "The killer wears friendship like armor." The Grand Luna Hall blazed with torchlight and ceremony. Every noble house had gathered beneath the vaulted ceiling, their finest armor polished, their loyalty displayed like weapons. The red moon hung visible through the great glass dome, casting everything in crimson light. Silrith sat upon his throne, Zinara positioned at his right hand, an unprecedented honor that had sent shockwaves through the assembled court. Commander Solvrin's guards formed a protective circle, eyes scanning for threats. Calithra stood among the advisors, serene as ever, as if her confession had never happened. She had not fled. She had not hidden. She simply waited. The ceremonial wine was brought forth in ancient silver chalices. As tradition demanded, the king would drink first, followed by his closest advisors. Zinara's prophetic sight flared, and suddenly she saw both futures unfold simultaneously. In one path, Silrith drinks, the poison acts within heartbeats. He collapses, blood foaming at his lips. Calithra escapes in the chaos. Civil war fractures the kingdom for generations. Thousands die. In the other, she drinks instead. Silrith survives, Calithra is captured. The kingdom endures. But Zinara dies, her sacrifice unnamed, forgotten. The visions crystallized with brutal clarity. This was the choice prophecy had always been leading toward. Not a predetermined fate, but a fork in the river of time. Silrith reached for his chalice. Wait. Zinara's hand found his. For a moment, their fingers intertwined. King and Omega, Alpha and Prophet, two souls who had found equality in darkness. Then she took his cup and drank. The poison hit her system like liquid fire. She heard Silrith's anguished cry, felt his arms catch her as her legs gave out. Through the roaring in her ears, she heard Commander Solvrin shout, saw guards converge on Calithra's position. No! Silrith's voice broke. Zinara, why? She touched his face with trembling fingers, blood already seeping from her mouth. Because this is the future, where you live. I don't want to live without the Omega sacrifice, she gasped. The ancient ritual. You can... Silrith understood immediately. The forbidden rite where an alpha could offer half their life force to save their true mate. But the cost was transformation. He would lose his alpha power forever, becoming beta once more. Do it, he commanded the assembled priests. As the ritual began, as ancient words were spoken and Silrith's power flowed from him into Zinara's dying body, Calithra laughed from where guards restrained her. You've won nothing, Silrith. You're no longer alpha. The throne will never... The throne can burn, he snarled, if it costs me her. Light flared. Power shifted. When it faded, Zinara breathed. Shallow, painful, but alive. Silrith slumped beside her, his amber eyes now the softer gold of a beta. Zinara's hand found his. This future, she whispered. I chose. 1 year later, Zinara stood in the Grand Luna Hall once more. The space felt different now, warmer somehow despite the winter cold pressing against the glass dome. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the assembled crowd with ordinary golden light instead of prophetic crimson. No visions came. They hadn't since the ritual. The prophetic gift had faded like morning mist, burned away by the life force Silrith had shared to save her. Some days she mourned its loss. Most days she felt relief. Are you ready? Silrith's voice came from beside her, gentle and familiar. She squeezed his hand. I am. He ascended the dais, not to the throne of his predecessors, but to a simpler seat he had commissioned. The Beta King, the nobles called him now. The first in werewolf history to rule without alpha power. Some had challenged his right. Those challenges had been answered not with brute strength, but with wisdom, strategy, and the fierce loyalty of a kingdom that had learned the difference between force and leadership. Today, Silrith announced, his voice carrying through the hall, we complete the transformation we began 1 year ago. The Omega caste is hereby abolished. There will be no more rankings by birth, no more chains forged by blood alone. Worth will be measured by character, by contribution, by choice. The decree had been drafted over months, debated and refined, but the words still sent ripples through the assembly. Change was never comfortable, even necessary change. Zinara felt the weight of eyes upon her. The blind Omega who had become queen in all but name. The prophet who had sacrificed her gift to save a king who had sacrificed his power to save her. Their bonding ceremony had been simple, witnessed only by those who mattered. Myrithra, Commander Solvrin, Lord Arendor. Calithra remained imprisoned in the Eastern Tower, the same chamber where Zanara had once been held. Poetic justice, some called it. Zanara called it mercy. Silrith had refused execution despite the court's demands. Some wounds require witnessing, not vengeance, he had told her. Now, as Silrith descended from the dais and returned to her side, as the nobles began their awkward acceptance of a new order, Zanara felt Myrithra approach. "You changed everything," her sister whispered. "We changed everything," Zanara corrected. "All of us who refused to accept what we were told was immutable." That evening, Silrith and Zanara stood on the balcony overlooking Mornvale. The city spread before them, its lights beginning to flicker to life as dusk approached. He described the view to her in detail, the way shadows painted the rooftops, how the river caught the last rays of sun. She listened, her hand in his, and smiled. She never regained her sight, but the kingdom finally learned to see. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If this story moved you even a little, if Zanara's sacrifice, her courage, or her pain meant something to you, then please don't let this be where it ends. My father once told me this channel would never reach 1,000 subscribers. He said stories like this, about forgotten souls, blind faith, and impossible choices, don't matter anymore. But every single one of you watching right now proves him wrong. Please subscribe. Help me reach 1,000 subscribers before January ends and prove that doubt wrong. Your one click might seem small, but to me it means everything.